Thank you. And team will get rolling in about 2 minutes. Okay, team, everybody ready? Get moving? Great. Well, hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program Community Briefing. We really want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. I know, and the team knows that it's been wild with the weather over the past weekend, and so things have been really challenging for some of you. So hope you and your family and your friends are staying safe. We're really excited to be launching into our first round of community engagement on replacing the Interstate Bridge on I-5 over the Columbia River. My name is Kirsten Pennington. I'm part of the Interstate Bridge Replacement Team, and I'm happy to be your host for the next hour. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we really dive in. Note that this is a Zoom webinar that's being recorded and streamed on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program YouTube channel. And the recording will be available on YouTube and on our website. And the address for that is www.interstatebridge.org. And we also wanted to share with you that closed captions are available in both English and Spanish. So English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. And you can also follow the link that's shown on the screen, and I'll read it in just a minute, but it's shown on the screen. And sorry, if you can flip back to the previous slide, thanks. If folks can, you can view English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. And the link to that is https://www.streamtext.net/player, PLAYER, $EVENT equals IBR. And I'll do that again because it was kind of a long one. So it's https://www.streamtext.net/PLAYER?EVENT equals IBR. Thanks. The next slide. So you can also follow the prompts on your screen to view the captions in a separate browser. And if you're watching this on Zoom, the controls for the closed captions are in the bottom middle of your screen. And if you don't see it, if you just move your cursor around, it should pop up and there's a CC. And if you click there, it'll turn on. And if you click again, it'll turn off. So that's an option that's available for everybody. If you experience any technical difficulties at any time during the presentation, you can call 503-897-9219, extension 413. And I'll say that again one more time for people. So it's 503-897-9219, extension 413. Okay, thanks. So our goal for this meeting is to make sure that we all have a common understanding of what the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program is and why replacing this aging bridge is a high priority for our area and our region. And also, most importantly, how your voice can help to shape the outcome. So at the end of this meeting, we'll be sharing a lot of other ways to get involved. So let me talk for a little bit about what to expect over the next hour together. Our meeting will be 4 short presentations with some of the folks you see with me on the screen. We'll have some interactive, I think, kind of fun audience participation opportunities. So I'll give a little bit of instructions on those. So hopefully we can learn more about what you care about and what's important to you. So if you can go to the next slide. It's important to just let you know that in order to participate in the audience participation, you do need to be in the Zoom webinar format. So if you're currently in YouTube and you want to participate in the questions and our interactive questionnaire, you can read the instructions. They're in the YouTube video description box for how to participate over Zoom. And so what will happen is you'll see some interactive questions just pop up on your screen, and you can pick your top 2, just click them, and then you can press the submit button at the bottom, and that will submit, and then we'll be able to see everybody's collective answers real time. So hopefully that's a fun part of our program. So let me just quickly introduce who else is with us all here tonight. So if we can go to the next slide. Just wanted to let you know that we also have Ray Mabey with us, Chris Regan, Kimberly Pinchera, and Jake War. And I'll give a small intro to each of them as they enter into their presentation later in the program. But I think we have the opportunity now for our first participation question, I believe. And this one is about priorities. So the question is, what are you most interested in learning about in today's presentation? And you can select up to 2. And the options are plans for future community engagement and feedback, potential benefits a replacement may offer, the timeline and process for considering a bridge replacement, or finally, something else. And I'll give folks just a few moments to think about that. And then we should be able to see how folks are responding. Okay. So we can see that based on the folks who were responding to this question, 63% of our pool of 35 respondents, it looks like, said the timeline and process for considering a bridge replacement was a priority for them to hear about. So, and that was followed by potential benefits a replacement may offer at 43%. So we'll make sure for all of us panelists that we're making sure to address those questions as we move through our presentations. Sound good? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that. And hopefully we can intersperse that and it'll be kind of fun as we move through the evening. So let's get started with our first presentation. And so I'd like to introduce you to our Program Assistant Administrator, Ray Mabey. Come on in, Ray.
Okay, well, unmute there. Thanks, Kirsten. Happy to be here with everybody tonight, and to those tuning in, thank you for being involved in the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Today, I'm going to present an overview of the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. The slide that's up right now shows a aerial photo of the project area. It shows I-5 crossing over the Columbia into Washington. So we're looking at Marine Drive, the Hayden Island, the Interstate Bridge over the Main River Crossing into Vancouver and up to SR 500. That's a general project area. The Interstate Bridge is composed of two historic crossings that no longer satisfy the needs of modern commerce and travel. The bridge serves as an important connection between communities. It's also a linchpin for state, regional, and national freight and commerce economies. Replacing the aging interstate bridge across the Columbia River with a seismically resilient multimodal structure that provides improved mobility for people, goods, and services has been a priority for Oregon and Washington for some time. Previous planning efforts developed a locally preferred alternative consisting of transportation solutions that met the purpose and needs defined at that time. Recognizing that these regional transportation issues remain unaddressed, both Washington and Oregon's dedicated funding to restart the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program in 2019. A program team was assembled, and work began on re-engaging stakeholders in re-evaluation of transportation data. The program is working on updating the previous identified needs, and to do this, we'll be looking at changes in the regulatory and land use policy environment, transit operations, the built environment, travel demands, and community values, to name a few. I'm going to review some of those needs with you tonight. This slide shows some fractured pavement, things that can happen during an earthquake. And so the existing bridges actually are 104 and 63 years old, and they're seismically vulnerable. Both were designed and constructed before modern seismic analysis and design methods were developed. They have vulnerabilities in the superstructure, the piece you can see, and the substructure, the supporting structure underneath that you can't. Trusses and lift span towers weren't designed to withstand vertical and horizontal loads from an earthquake. The foundation of the bridges are comprised of timber piles and sandy soils. Engineers have found that these soils perform poorly in a large earthquake. This area is at risk for a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. The last one in 1700 was a 9.0 magnitude earthquake. Scientists have predicted there's a 37% chance that this area will have a 7.1 magnitude earthquake within the next 50 years. We have concerns that the bridges will not be serviceable after a major earthquake. A bridge designed to modern requirements is needed for this important corridor. This slide shows traffic going through the trusses and shows the growing travel demand and congestion happening. And it continues to be a major issue within the corridor. Data from our 2019 shows that traffic clogs the freeway 7 to 11 hours a day during weekdays. This is up from 3 to 4 hours a day identified in the previous effort. COVID restrictions had an immediate impact on this, reducing travel and congestion. However, traffic volumes are quickly approaching pre-COVID numbers. Travel demand and congestion is expected to increase over the coming years throughout the project area. Long commuter travel times and reliability of freight delivery times both continue to be growing issues. The lift span necessary to allow for river navigation is one of a dozen stop signs on interstates across the country, and the only stop sign between Canada and Mexico on the I-5. This exacerbates the congestion issues. Next slide, please. This slide shows a C-TRAN bus just about to cross the bridge. And so that takes us to transit. And reliable transit options are limited on the bridge. C-TRAN has express bus service to the Portland area from Vancouver, but its service is subject to the same delays as regular traffic due to congestion, accidents, and bridge lifts. It's difficult to have reliable travel times and service in these conditions. There is no high-capacity transit service to support broad modal choice for commuters and community members. This slide shows a bicyclist daring crossing the bridge. On the bridge, especially through the trusses, you have a narrow sidewalk between the guardrail or pedestrian rail and the truss members of the bridge. And so biking and walking across the bridge is challenging. And this slide shows that very narrow path of sidewalk area that is shared with the truss members. Navigating through the project area, whether biking, walking, or rolling, is far from ideal. Modern facilities for walking, biking, and rolling are needed to provide accessible and safe active transportation options. I think this is my last slide. It shows two images here. One is a graph of a diagram of the project area with distances between interchanges. And over the 5 miles, we've got the most distances across the main river crossing of 9/10 of a mile, and the shortest is 1/2 a mile. The other image is a picture of emergency vehicles responding to an accident on the bridge. This program area continues to have one of the highest accident rates in the state. The outdated design contributes to these high rates. As I said before, there are 7 closely spaced interchanges within the 5-mile program area. It also has limited shoulders. It has narrow travel lanes. It also has a hump on the bridge that limits how far ahead drivers can see. Those close interchanges and short on and off ramps make safe merging into traffic difficult. On top of all this, and in these conditions, traffic on the interstate has to come to a stop due to bridge lifts. These high accident rates are preventable, though, with a new bridge that includes modern connections. With that, I'll wrap it up. I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you all today, and I'll turn it back to you, Kirsten.
Great. Thank you so much, Ray. Really appreciate that comprehensive overview. Okay, we now have our next participation opportunity. This one is focusing on current problems or concerns with the existing interstate bridge. And again, just a reminder, you can pick 2. It's multiple choice, and you can do this from the Zoom webinar feature. There are instructions on the YouTube version. So the question is, what are your concerns with the existing interstate bridge? The options are earthquake vulnerability, limited public transit, transportation safety, congestion and reliability, inadequate bike or pedestrian pathways, impaired freight movement, or other. And we'll wait just a few moments to let people have an opportunity to submit their responses. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so you can see that a lot of the respondents to our group, 76% out of 42 respondents, said congestion and reliability. And then that's followed by earthquake vulnerability at about 52%. And then inadequate bike and pedestrian path at 31, and limited public transit at 33. And then safety and freight also making a showing. So thank you so much. That's really helpful feedback for our team as we are in the early stages of moving forward with re-engaging with the public on this program. Next up, we have Chris Regan, our environmental manager for the IBR program. And Chris is going to talk about the timeline and environmental process for the program. So Chris, you'll remember this was something that people were excited to learn about in our first interactive opportunity in terms of hearing from folks. So that's great. And you're up in terms of also sharing how the feedback we hear from the community will help shape the purpose and need and vision and values in the future of this program. So Chris, you're up. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. Really appreciate it. And yes, I'll do my best to talk about the timeline and not drown you in too many words, as most environmental processes tend to do. What you have in front of you now is a graphic showing the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program's timeline. And I like to look at this and understand that before we understand where we are and where we're going, it's important to understand where we've been. And from 2004 to 2014, both Oregon and Washington spent about 10 years trying to develop a Columbia River crossing. A lot of effort went into that project. It went through the National Environmental Policy Act, the federal environmental process, and went through an environmental impact statement, resulting in a final environmental impact statement and a record of decision. In that document was a lot of information, a lot of analysis, and then that project was put on hold. And it was put on hold, and about 5 years later, we started talking again about how to restart the program, what to look for, what we needed to do to fund a project and to identify new problems that might exist in the project area. So right now we are in the planning and environmental phase. And that planning and environmental phase will carry us through 2023. During this phase, we're evaluating the problems, seeing what's changed, defining ways that we can screen alternatives to get to a project that will take will replace the bridge and be able to take us over the river. In 2024, that environmental documentation should be complete, and we'll hand it over to our engineers and designers, which will design for about a year. In 2025, construction should start. It's important to recognize that under all of these efforts, including the previous one and the efforts we're doing right now, community engagement is the foundation for everything we're doing. Next slide, please. And it's important part of the reason why community engagement is important is because of the environmental process. There are two pictures on this slide. The first one on the left is a word picture identifying that the NEPA process was created to ensure that for any given project, the public has a voice and the environmental impacts are studied. As a matter of fact, when the National Environmental Policy Act was signed in 1970, there were a number of high-profile environmental catastrophes that happened in our nation. And at about the same time that a number of large federal projects were being done in a manner that didn't allow the public to have input. And so NEPA has two pillars. One, that the community must be engaged and given a voice to provide perspective to our decision makers, and that environmental impacts had to be known before decisions were made. The picture on the right is a typical public process when we're not in quarantine. Next slide, please. Community engagement is critical to all aspects of the program, especially at this early stage. In 2021, we will need your support in the following activities to help shape future alternatives. We are going to update the purpose and need. The purpose and need describes the problems that we're trying to get to and the reason why we're doing the project. It's what is necessary for proceeding with the environmental review process and the National Environmental Policy Act. We will also be establishing community visions and values. Those vision and values will help us screen potential solutions to the problems at hand. Together, the purpose and need and the vision and values will help us develop screening criteria for evaluating alternatives. Next slide, please. And we have a number of groups that are helping the program as well. The Executive Steering Group is a group of transportation professionals that provide regional leadership guidance and recommendations on key program development topics. We also have 2 advisory groups. Our Equity Advisory Group provides insight and input on the program's processes, approaches, and decisions that may affect historically underserved and underrepresented communities. And our Community Advisory Group. Our Community Advisory Group provides input and feedback reflective of the community's needs, issues, and concerns to influence program outcomes. Next slide, please. Right now, those groups are focused on the foundation of our environmental process. That's crafting, updating our purpose and need. Our purpose is a statement that concisely identifies what the proposed action is intended to accomplish. It's stated very broadly, and it's got to be broad enough that more than one solution can be considered. Our needs are our problem statements. They provide evidence of deficiencies or the problem. It explains why the proposed action has been undertaken. It identifies existing or expected future problems within a defined area. For the previous planning effort, the previously identified purpose and need were described by Ray earlier. It's seismic vulnerability, inadequate bicycle and pedestrian facilities, limited public transportation operation, connectivity and reliability, growing travel demand and congestion, safety and vulnerability to incidents, and impaired freight movement. Our community vision and values are the foundation for developing criteria and performance measures to evaluate alternatives. Previously, we identified that community livability or quality of life is important, mobility, reliability, accessibility, congestion reduction and efficiency, modal choice, safety, regional economy and freight mobility, stewardship of natural and human resources, distribution of impacts and benefits, cost effectiveness and financial resources, and bi-state cooperation. Next slide, please. So the picture graphic that we have in front of you defines how we've gone through the National Environmental Policy Act. Right now, what we're doing, we've evaluated prior planning efforts. Our prior planning effort had a purpose statement and need statements. It had a vision and values. We've analyzed that and we've pulled it into what we're doing now. We're looking at what has changed. We're looking at planning and regulatory policies and goals that might have changed. We're updating data and providing new analysis. We're using previous NEPA work to identify constraints and commitments that were made within the program area. And we're assessing and updating community values. We're taking that information and gaining feedback and recommendations from our community engagement as a whole, including you tonight, community advisory groups, equity advisory groups, the regulatory agencies, tribes, our executive steering group, and the Bi-State Legislative Committee. With that feedback, looking at what has changed, we will pull that forward into the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program's purpose and need. We will use previously identified transportation problems that haven't been resolved and new transportation problems that have emerged. We will create the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program's vision and values, defining program success, reflecting community values, and identifying local goals and targets. We're going to use those to see how our purpose and need and vision and values applied. They're going to help us document why changes require new solutions, to establish evaluation criteria to screen alternatives, evaluate prior alternatives and inform development of new alternatives, and identify and modify the locally preferred alternative that was established. And I think that might be it, Kirsten.
Thank you, Chris. That was a ton of great information, so appreciate that overview. Hey, I'm going to put you on the spot, so don't mute yourself quite yet. Wanted to ask you a question that we've been hearing from the community lately, And the question is around how will the new bridge be funded, and will tolls be part of that funding? So could you talk a little bit about that, Chris, please?
Sure. We're looking right now for a broad source of funding opportunities. We're looking at the federal level, at state, and we're trying to figure out how best we can fund. But right now, it looks like tolling is part of the answer to that question. We have to. We're coming up with a finance plan, and we're doing our best to find ways to minimize tolls. But there's no way that we can do this because federal sources of money and state sources of money are fairly limited.
Okay, Chris, thank you. I'm sure a lot of people are interested in that, that question and answer. So let's move next to our next audience participation opportunity. This one is again around your priorities. So we should have our question box pop up in just a second, and there it is. And the question is, which of the following do you view as an important priority to address as we consider options for the Interstate Bridge? And remember, you can pick up to two of your favorites. So one is supporting jobs in the economy, reducing traffic congestion, ensuring earthquake safety, offering choices for how people can travel, whether car, transit, walking, biking, rolling, evaluating potential impact on neighboring communities, improving road safety, and minimizing environmental and/or climate impacts. I'll give a few minutes for folks to vote. Okay, thank you. Looks like we had 40 respondents. And of those 40, 68% of you said reducing traffic congestion. And then that was followed pretty closely by ensuring earthquake safety. So that was 40%, offering choices for how people can travel at 33. And then all of the other options making a showing as well. So thank you again for that information. It really helps us to understand where you all are as a community and where we all are together as a community in understanding what's important as we move forward. Okay, so let's move to you, Jake. Our next presenter is Jake War, who is a transportation planner with expertise in centering equity and inclusion in public projects. And Jake, I think you're going to share with us how our program plans to center equity in every aspect of our program. So take it away, please.
All right, indeed. And I've got to say, you know, even though we can't see anyone, the nerves of public speaking are still there. So if I slip up, please be forgiving. Yeah, if we can go to the next slide. So one thing that, that Chris mentioned in talking about the environmental review, there are federal regulations as part of that that look at the social and economic impacts. You might have heard or be familiar with environmental justice. And so at the federal level, the U.S. Department of Transportation, they have guidance that, that we need to follow. And that guidance has three elements to it, essentially, at its most basic level. The first is ensuring the full and fair participation by all potentially affected communities. The second being to avoid, minimize, or mitigate disproportionately high and adverse human health and environmental effects, including social and economic effects on minority or low-income populations. And then preventing the denial of, reduction in, or significant delay in the receipt of benefits by minority or low-income populations. And so that's sort of the regulatory environment, the government kind of required compliance piece, but we really want to center equity. We've said that a lot, and what that really means is we're trying to change the frame from what is instead of what's the floor, what are our minimum requirements to, you know, check the box. we want to look at this through the lens of what if this project and all the benefits that it has, what if those are really targeted to historically marginalized communities? What if those communities actually disproportionately benefited? What if this project really centers the voices of those communities in our engagement and other activities? And then in our processes from planning, again, community engagement, what if those and how effective they are and how meaningful they are, what if those were actual concrete outcomes? So we're trying to think about it that way. And I've got an image here on the right that shows a mural that was it's in Massachusetts that's kind of representing a group of social justice and transportation advocates. Next slide, please. And again, how we're centering equity is we're doing it in several specific ways. One is acknowledging and grounding the program in the history of the Columbia River, the indigenous communities that have lived there for millennia and have been displaced over time. The I-5 corridor, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the impacts that has had on the community, things like the Vanport flood, and particularly those impacts on the African-American community, other historically marginalized communities. We have a Chief Equity Officer, John L. Bell, who he is the lead. My title is Equity Lead, but he is the true lead of this effort. And we've got an equity program team of which I'm a part to really try to guide this project. And then an equity advisory group that we've set up that's comprised of community members, representatives of community-based organizations, and program partners. It's meant to guide the program towards equitable processes and outcomes. Then we are looking at, and Kimberly's going to talk about this more, inclusive and intentional community engagement strategies. We are ensuring and doing our best to provide language accessibility and inclusion for those who have limited English proficiency, accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities, which you've probably noticed as we've showed images. We're trying to describe those images in words because we recognize that there are folks who have low vision or who are blind, and we want our presentations and our materials to be accessible to those folks so they can be fully participatory. And then finally, education and training for IBR program staff around diversity, equity, inclusion, so that our capacity and really the way that we're approaching this stays true to that commitment to centering equity. I believe that's back to you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Jake. And I couldn't tell nerves at all. No worries. You did great. Thank you so much. Thanks for that good information. So we're headed on to Kimberly Pinchera, who is our IBR Program Communications Manager. Hi, Kimberly. And Kimberly's going to give us an overview of community engagement strategies and how everyone either listening to this live or a recording can get involved more with this program. So welcome, Kimberly.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kirsten. And if we can just jump straight into the next slide, I say Kirsten gave a great kind of intro into what I'll try to cover with these slides. And I will just say, I think Chris did a great job of setting this up in terms of why community engagement is so critical for the program. And it really does truly shape all of our program development work. And it really just highlights, why we are really trying to get as much public participation as possible in the process. We do want to make sure that all of our work really does truly reflect community values and voices, and that our end product, that we're able to identify a solution that is supported by the community. And so on this slide, you will see these are basically just some of the fundamental priorities that we are bringing to our work. Jake did a great job of highlighting many of these pieces. I really gave a great overview of how we're really centering equity in all of our work. And along with that, paired alongside equity, our other priorities you'll see on this screen, and you will see they are visualized as a circle with arrows connecting them to each other to really highlight the fact that these are all interconnected priorities and values. So alongside equity, we are also prioritizing diversity, accessibility, transparency, and inclusion. And so really, as we approach all of our engagement and outreach efforts, we're really trying to view them through the lens of these values and really asking ourselves, are we upholding these priorities and values in our work? Are there ways where we can be doing better and ways to improve? So as Jake mentioned, we're already looking at ways that we can improve in our accessibility and in how we're making sure that our meetings and events and materials are all as accessible and inclusive as possible. So, at the start of this meeting, Kirsten highlighted, we have closed captioning available in both English and Spanish for all of our meetings and events. We have a call-in option for people who might not have access to technology, and we're just really trying to make sure that we are providing as many of those ways to engage as possible and really minimizing those barriers to engagement. So when we talk about these values, what does that look like as we implement that? And so, we're touching on some of those pieces and what I just referenced in terms of trying to make sure that we are inclusive and accessible, but it's also really trying to make sure that we are reaching the broadest range of voices that we can, so that we are providing different avenues and different tools for people to participate, to get information on the program, but also then to provide input back to the program team. And really trying to make sure that we're being proactive in connecting with communities of concern, and that we are trying to reach people from a broad range of backgrounds and perspectives. So whether that is race and ethnicity, whether it's income, age, disability, houseless, community members, kind of basically what are all of the different perspectives that we have, out there in our community, and how do we make sure that we are getting the broadest range of voices possible and participation possible on the program. And really also trying to make sure that we are demonstrating transparency and accountability, so that we are being open and clear about how decisions are made. So Chris did a great job of overviewing, this kind of phase of the process, and, what steps we are going to be taking to make decisions and how that influences the next stage of work. In our community engagement efforts and our outreach efforts, we're trying to be very clear about that. How can the community input shape program work, and how can the community help shape those decisions? And how can the community hold us accountable? And how can we hold ourselves accountable to make sure that we are upholding our values and our goals? Next slide, please. So this is a fairly long list. I will kind of briefly talk through some of these pieces. So this is just to give an example. When we say that we're trying to use a variety of tools and avenues to reach people, we really are looking at both what are those kind of traditional methods, that we can reach people, but also how can we be creative and kind of embrace some innovative ways to connect with people. And as we continue our outreach efforts, we will continue to expand upon this and kind of add additional efforts and tools, as we go on. We'll also be evaluating the effectiveness of our efforts. So are there methods that are working well? Do we feel like we see a gap in any of our efforts, and are there ways we can improve? So right now we have three, as was mentioned earlier, three different advisory groups that are meeting. All of those meetings are open to the public. They all provide an avenue to provide public comment either before, during, or after the meeting. And I should note also, as an additional effort at accessibility and inclusion, all of those meetings, the videos are available after the fact. So if you're not able to participate in the live meeting and watch it live, all of the videos for all of our meetings are available on the website as well, along with the meeting materials. Events such as our online open houses and surveys, we will be targeting towards key milestones in the program development work. So as Chris outlined, right now, our really concerted focus is on the purpose and need and vision and values. That is the milestone that we are currently working on. At those other key milestones, as we start to do alternatives analysis and those other key milestones in program work, will also have similar opportunities to really get targeted feedback from the public to help inform those discussions and those decisions. live virtual events such as this. So this is really another opportunity, just trying to provide a different type of way to provide information and report out to the public, and also to solicit feedback and let people know about those opportunities to engage. So again, as we move forward, we'll kind of assess, do we think this format worked? Do we think there are other formats we could use for other virtual events and live events? And so we might try different options, down the road, depending on how we feel things are working. Multicultural outreach liaisons we are working directly with. And so we have a great team of outreach liaisons that are deeply embedded in their communities and speak multiple languages so that they can help connect directly with those communities. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as I move on a little bit more, but that is one of those targeted efforts to reach those communities of concern. We're also reaching out to community-based organizations and really trying to partner with them to help spread the word. So to ask, for their help in helping us spread the word about outreach opportunities and ways to get engaged within their networks. So really recognizing that there are a lot of really fantastic organizations, within our community that can reach people that we might not be able to reach alone. We recently started up our own social media platform. So we are using social media for engagement as well. And you'll see us very proactive on those platforms. We are also currently advertising on Facebook to try to reach the digital audience and try to reach kind of different members of the public who might not be able to reach otherwise, again, to let them know about this opportunity to engage. And similarly, we're being very proactive in media outreach, and that will be ongoing throughout the program, really trying to make sure we have those relationships with our media partners and are really able to make sure that we're getting information out there about just program updates and ways to plug in and provide input. And of course, I say fairly common, doing direct email notifications. So that includes our e-newsletter as well as other email blasts to let people know about the program. So certainly encourage people to sign up for updates through the program, and we will be very proactive in making sure that we are sending out updates through that avenue as well. And this next piece, digital, print, direct mail, and radio advertising, this is really focusing on how we get the word out. And so in addition to what I've already mentioned, we are looking or have implemented a comprehensive advertising campaign to try to make sure that the community has all the information available, that they know that we have opportunities for them to provide input, and that now is when we are really asking for their voice and asking them to engage. And I will say that as we put together that advertising campaign, that was also very intentional to make sure we were looking at diverse publications and really trying to reach communities of concern as well as broad of an audience as possible out in the public. So you'll see that's why we have a number of different types of advertising that we're utilizing as well, recognizing that people get their information from different sources. And so we're trying to make sure that we are reaching as many people as possible with those efforts. And then these next three are pieces that we'll kind of fold in as we move a little bit farther along throughout this year, but we know we'll want to start incorporating opportunities to have very targeted discussions on specific topics, and that could take the form of working groups or focus groups, discussion groups, but again, opportunities to have really targeted and focused conversations. We'll also be folding in a video storytelling campaign as well as a podcast series. And again, just looking at creative ways to engage with people and provide information that we might not typically do on a transportation project. Next slide, please. And right now, so we have a couple of kind of key pieces to our engagement efforts that we're working on right now. So the first is an online open house. And so you can access this from the main webpage, interstatebridge.org, and it's featured fairly prominently right there on that home page. And this is really intended to provide background information to the public. So similar to this event tonight, it's really trying to give people information on where we're at, the process, the timeline, just basic overview of the program so that you can then provide us with really substantive feedback and input on the program itself. So the online open house is available in 8 different languages in addition to English. So that includes Russian and Ukrainian, Chinese, both simplified and traditional, Somali, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And those are all, so that includes the web platform itself, as well as all the materials available on the online open house itself. And there is an avenue to provide direct input, through the online open house itself. But we're also really asking people to participate in an interactive survey that kind of digs in a little bit deeper. So on here, the image that you'll see here is just a screenshot of that online open house, again, that is available on our website at interstatebridge.org. Next slide, please. And so I mentioned the survey. So this photo here is just a screenshot of that survey. So the survey itself is accessible through the online open house. And so it's pretty easy to navigate to get there once you're on the online open house itself. And the survey, as I mentioned, so this is really designed to ask people more specific targeted questions to help us as we do our work to update the purpose and need and identify the community vision and values. So there are several different tabs that folks can walk through. And again, it's very interactive, but it's really asking people to provide us some substantive information or just feedback to help us as we move forward with that work. And because of just the platform that this was used for, this one is available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese and on the online platform, but then we also have printed copies available in those same 8 languages that I referenced previously. And our multicultural community liaisons will have printed copies of those available as well, and they will also, as they connect directly with community members, will be able to assist community members, fill those out if needed. They can also mail copies of them. The program team can also mail a copy to anyone who needs a copy. And there's also a phone number available for both the online open house and the interactive survey for anyone who needs assistance or would like to request other formats of the survey or to help walking through the online open house. And so that number, it's a little bit small since it's in the screenshot, but I will reference that is 888-503-6735. And again, I'll do it one more time, 888-503-6735. Next slide, please. And in addition to those kind of current efforts that we have ongoing, we certainly want to encourage, there are a number of other ways to engage. So just because so both right now, while we are in this kind of targeted outreach timeframe, but also just throughout the life of the program, we will always have opportunities for the community to contact us and to get involved, provide input, ask questions. So I have a few of those opportunities or avenues, I should say, that are highlighted here. As we mentioned, all of our advisory group meetings are open to the public and provide opportunities for public input. You can see the entire list of upcoming meetings as well as access past meetings and materials on our website at www.interstatebridge.org/calendar. And you'll see just kind of a quick screenshot of that on the right. It just shows you can actually see a calendar format of the events as well as a list on the right-hand side of upcoming meetings and direct links to those, as well as the ways to, the links to participate and phone numbers to participate. I mentioned, we do have email notifications, so we do have a direct distribution list, and certainly encourage people to sign up if they are not already on that list, if they'd like to receive updates on the program. And that list can be found that sign up can be found at www.interstatebridge.org/contact. And then our team is always available. So we have either by email, we also have several phone numbers that people can call if there are questions, or if you'd like to request a briefing, for your organization, or just provide input. And so our email for the team is info@interstatebridge.org. interstate.org. And we do have 3 different phone numbers. I'm just going to read off the toll-free one since that's available to everyone. 888-503-6735. So really encourage, we want to hear from everyone. So we really appreciate everyone's time who's here today. And we hope you will take that next step if you haven't already and go visit our online open house. And please take our survey as well. Let us know what you think.
Great. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for describing all of those opportunities to get involved. And tonight is one way to get involved a little bit and provide us some feedback via audience participation opportunities. And we'll find out a little bit more about what you think about engagement in this next question. And again, we're taking this information and this will help us augment and craft approaches for community engagement moving forward. Okay, so the last question of the evening, the last interactive participation opportunity of the evening is around engagement. Like I said, the question is, how do we meet our community where they are and listen to what is important? Again, remember, you can vote for up to 2, and the options are hosting virtual or in-person events. We'd love to do that when we can. Use social media. Provide access to team members, so opportunities like office hours. Seeking input through surveys, or other. Give just a few moments for folks to fill that out. Submit your responses. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. So pretty overwhelming majority of folks said hosting virtual or in-person events is a good way that we should be moving forward with our program. So thanks, that's very helpful. So 71% out of the 38 respondents favored hosting virtual or in-person events. Other folks, 42% talked about seeking input through surveys as a good way to reach people, and still pretty good showings with social media, access to team members, and other. So again, thanks so much for participating in that kind of survey. It's really useful as we move forward with our work. Well, thank you everyone so much for taking the time to join us this evening. We know you have many competing priorities for your time, so we are honored that you chose it to spend here with us. We hope that you found the information helpful. We again will talk about interstatebridge.org as an opportunity to go and experience the online open house and share your ideas and thoughts and priorities and what's important to you over a survey. We will look forward to engaging with you in person when we can, when we are able to health-wise. But really, really appreciate your time this evening. And thanks again, and have a wonderful night. And thanks, team.